We'd like to now introduce our keynote speaker, Winona LaDuke. Fulfilling our responsibilities to creation, Winona LaDuke is an internationally renowned activist working on issues of sustainable development, renewable energy, climate change, and cultural reclamation. She lives and works on the White Earth Reservation in North Minnesota and is Director of Honor the Earth and founder of the White Earth Land Recovery Project.
Thank you. Hello, can you all hear me? Ani Nindoe Maganaduk, hello my relatives, Binesi Kwe Indigenicas, Makwa Nodem, Gababani Kag, Ishkaniganing and Dunjaba Miigwech. Thank you very much for the honor of being here. I know this microphone is going in and out, right? So I'm really loud. I've raised 6 kids. I have like 15 grandchildren, so I'm just gonna continue in the mom voice, okay? Y'all with me on that? So I'm really honored to be here today. I was kind of confused as to my exact direction. And so what I prepared to talk to you about is my idea on how to indigenize your education system. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do a little bit. And I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a background. You heard I'm from northern Minnesota. I'm from the White Earth Reservation. I have a lot of academic credentials, if it's gonna help y'all. I went to Harvard and to MIT. I'm an economist, okay? But actually, I consider myself a human being, and the question that I face every day is kind of the question we all face is, how do we do the best we can do? How do we carry out our responsibilities, whatever it is our gift? And I know that those of you who are here, hats off to you. It is a huge opportunity, responsibility, the education of our children. I'm grateful to you for your work, and I'm going to do my best to say a few things that I think you might think about in this. And please excuse me if I am from the south of that sacred medicine line, but if it makes y'all feel better, I lived in Moose Factory for 6 years. Anybody know where that is? Thank you. Northern Ontario. I was married to a great chief there, Randy Kapashisa, who has passed away, but I have a lot of my experience, though, comes from my own territory. So I'm thinking about what to talk to you about today. I want to start with this month in our language would be Benakwe Ogizis. Now I don't know if it's exactly the same with Dave, but it's means when the leaves start falling. Benakwe Ogizis, right? Kashkaden Ogizis is the moon which follows, which is the freezing over moon. Manitou Gizasoon's little spirit moon, Gishi Manitou Gizis, great spirit moon. Then we have a moon called Namaybin Gizis. I don't know if you have that one here, but it's a sucker moon. Namaybin is a sucker, referring to when the suckers are moving under the ice. Although we have this discussion at home, it's like I don't know if that's exactly when they move, but. Onabana Gizis, that's the hard-crusted snow moon. That's around March. Also known as the moon you don't want to do a faceplant in the snow, right? Iskigami Zigigizis, that is our maple syruping moon. Do you have maple trees here? All right, so y'all syrup up here, you know what I'm talking about? Very significant. It's like when the earth wakes up. It's like one of my favorite, each day is my favorite day. You know what I mean? I'm grateful every day. But I really like that when the earth is waking up and the magic is coming through the trees. Then Wabagana Gizis, that's our flower moon. Odamina Gizis, our strawberry moon. Mean Gizis, our blueberry moon. Menominake Gizis, our wild rice making moon. Our wild rice making moon where we take to the lakes and rivers of our great territory, Anishinaabe-King, the only place in the world where wild rice grows. And then we have Watibaga Gizis when the leaves change color. Now I just wanted to kind of share that with you. Many of you may know that as a lot of Anishinaabe people here, and maybe things are a little different in your territory, but those are our moons. And I like to say that for a few reasons, because first, I always like to speak, to the extent I can, but I just like to hear our language, because that is the language of this land. It is the language Oma King of this land. It's the language that belongs here, and it describes a place here, and it is language which is from here. And so I think it's always important And non-Indigenous teachers need to understand and begin to embrace and allow that in more and more, that language. You know, I say that first. But the other thing is that I think it's a very, very important construct, because did you notice that none of those moons is named after a Roman emperor? Did y'all get that? So part of the point of this is that it's possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. I just want you to think about that. Because part of this whole moment that we're in, that my esteemed elder and friend Dave is talking about, and I was very grateful for your prayers as well, is this moment in time where we're in, where it is incumbent upon us to find courage, to find clear thinking, and maybe we need to leave a few bags on the side. Don't carry all that heavy stuff around, it's way too heavy. It is unnecessary to carry all that colonialism and all that. You know, I mean, obviously, the country that is upon me is the United States, and if every day I woke up and thought Donald Trump is my life, I would be very upset. You know what I'm saying? So I just kind of like leave that and continue on. And I'm saying it is really important to figure out what is our role as individuals. What is our role in this moment? And what is necessary and what is not necessary to carry along. And so be courageous. Because you have this opportunity to speak, to be present for these young people. You know, what a sacred responsibility and opportunity that is. So I started with this piece of art. I don't know if you can't see these too well, but this is a piece from Roy Thomas, which is, we are all in the same boat. It's like, I kind of like it, pretty much that. I mean, you know, we come from different places, but Omaha King, and at this moment in time of the seventh fire, the time when our Mother Earth, I mean, we could talk about all kinds of stuff, but if you cannot drink your water, which is what we are going to be looking at, what we are looking at right now, if you cannot drink your water, we will not be alive. So it is a time when we must call upon ourselves to be the sacred beings we are, to make sure that generations who are not yet here will be able to drink their water. Okay, now I'm going to do this secret thing and say, turn that thing. Oh yeah, okay. So this is another piece of art by Roy Thomas. And I always bring this art up because a couple of things. So when I was an undergraduate at Harvard University, you know, and interestingly enough, they just brought me back as a visiting professor this last year, and a couple of years ago I got knighted. My dad called it getting knighted by Harvard. He said, what did you get an award for? The student they were happiest to see graduate? Because I was a stalwart activist there at Harvard, you know. But I did my dues, and as I said, I studied economics. But having said that, you know, at Harvard University, if you wanted to study the art from Europe, you went to the Fogg Museum and the Fine Arts program. But if you wanted to study indigenous art, you went to anthropology. And so what I want to say is that, what does that say about the valuation of knowledge? What does that say about the valuation of people? And that is a really important thing, because you know, you are in this moment in time when you are educators. And what I want to suggest to you is that all people's knowledge is valid. And that there are teachings inside our art. That is a totally different worldview than something that's, you know, going to come out of Gauguin or Renoir. You know what I'm saying? This is our art, and it is art from here. And it comes from our spiritual teachings. It is, you know, our instructions. It talks about in the art, you know, I don't know if you can really see it, but there's like spirit lines that connect beings. Spirit lines that connect beings. That is a teaching that Dave was referring to in Dinaway Mugginatuk, that we are all related. We are all related. It is contained within our art. And so to me, it is really, really important that a multicultural education does not mean kind of like a little peppering in. You know, a few things here and there, and you know, I always laugh because you know, in the U.S., you know, I was thinking about this on the way up. You know, like I have to say, I think of white people every day. I just want y'all to know you're good. I think about white people every day. But in the U.S., you know, they really only think about Native people. There's a season between like that October 12th and Thanksgiving, you know, in November, and that's like our season of being remembered. Someone remembers us, unless you do something really drastic, like take over a big pipeline project. They're like, oh yeah, they're out there, you know. So I'm saying we're all in this together. You know, we're all in this together. And I know this is my season, but I know this is Manitoba. And I know you think about us a little bit more than that. Okay, let's see what the next slide is. This is where I live. This is the next thing I want to talk about. Round Lake. Round Lake. So as we rethink how we teach, or how we think about how we teach, you know, I have this thing, you know, where, you know, so you take, for instance, Anamaki Waju. You know, you talk about a place, the place where the thunder beings rest in their migration from west to east. A place where the thunder beings rest on their migration from west to east. There's a great mountain. You know, and that mountain is right, it's outside of what they today call Thunder Bay, right? And that's why they refer to that, because we have always observed that our thunder beings, you know, because in our universe, which, you know, Dave talked a little bit about before, but, you know, it is, our universe is many levels, you know, above and below, many different planes. We don't just live like right here in the fiscal year plane. That's not us. We're not those people. We're the ones that, you know, we hear them thunder beings talk. That's us. And so we gotta go talk to them, we gotta put our prayers out and our offerings out and communicate with that, what the Creator, all the power that the Creator is there, because we are connected to that. We understand that as spiritual beings. So that place that, you know, where the thunder beings rest on our migration from west to east, now that's called Mount McKay, right? Now, this is part of my problem in Canada and the United States, the naming of large mountains after small men. Whole damn country like that, you know? Got all these like mountains named after these guys, you don't even know who those guys were, right? You know, they kind of blew through and, you know, but there's something about that whole naming thing that is really a challenge to me. Because, you know, it is the naming of something as immortal as a mountain after something as mortal as a human. You know what I'm saying? Is like, not only is it this arrogance and craziness, but it like has no, it is like preposterous, really. You know, and the whole country, your whole damn country is named like that, right? And y'all know it, you know, and it's part of that. I mean, I don't even want to start on that colonization road thing, man. That's like crazy. Every time I gotta go see my colonization road so I know where I'm at, you know? For crying out loud. But that's just the streets, right? But you got a whole continent named like that. And so I want to think about that. And I think that part of what needs to be taught in these universities and in these high schools and in these grade schools is the deconstructing of colonial geography. You know, we need to take, you know, kind of start moving that back. And it's okay. It's okay. It works out. I mean, you know, it's like, it's not just Canada, it's not just the United States. Think of that place like Ayers Rock. Remember that place over there in Australia, that big darn rock, you know? And like, who the heck was Ayers, right? You know what I'm saying? But it was like Uluru. That's what they call that place. You know what I'm saying? And then you have that, you know, Haida Gwaii got back its name. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's okay. Just let it go. Just let it go. And I think that embracing it, because being present on the land and being present in the geography of place, and being, you know, and just, you know, moving through that is part of what it is essential for all of us at this point, for our own personal presence here, but also as we have the opportunity to educate young people. Is to say, you know, this is what this thing was called here, and we're moving on. You know, I mean, I know that there's official naming and unnaming ceremonies, but I like them. I always feel better, you know, when things kind of get back, but that's where I live. Gawawi Ekamug. Okay, now let's look at the next slide. It'll be about as much surprise to you as it is to me. Oh yeah, okay, so now I want to talk about, I always like that guy down there, that Trump guy. He's always talking about making America great. Y'all hear that when he says that, I'm make America great? I'm like, let me tell you when America was great. Let me just tell you that, buddy. So when you had 8,000 varieties of corn, right? That's great. Tremendous agro-biodiversity. 8,000 varieties of corn. I even got one of my corn here from my field. I pick, wait, here. I picked this yesterday in my field before I left. I said, oh, I got to pick my corn, you know, and then I start picking, and then my family picked. But this is a Dakota white flint corn. It's a heritage variety. But my point is a couple of things. One is that that's when America was great, when there's 8,000 varieties of corn, and part of that, like, as you reflect on how to discuss Indigenous people, like, those 8,000 varieties of corn were developed by Indigenous people. You know, and a lot of the people who develop those corn varieties are actually women. Women are the best seed savers and the best ones for seed selection, because why? One is we know, like, we're usually in the garden. Two, you know how it saves and you know how it cooks, right? Because you don't want to, like, grow something that don't taste good, right? Or doesn't cook well, right? So Indigenous women is who have had historically and presently have this vast intellectual capacity to develop tremendous agrobiodiversity. That was before Monsanto, Syngenta, and all them guys, right? You know, what I'm saying is that there's somehow in this mythology that's created in Canada and the United States, this idea that modern agriculture is what exists. Modern agriculture is like an aberration. Industrialized agriculture is an aberration. And these tremendous agrobiodiversity, you know, 250 species of grass in this territory here. You know, I often drive, you know, so I drive up here and I think, I wonder what Louis Riel looked at. You know, I wonder what my ancestors looked at. You know, I wonder what they all looked like. Some of my ancestors came up from here too. Obviously, I'm a LaDuke, right? You know, so some of my ancestors came down from over here too. And when I said, you know, what did they look at? And they looked at 250 species of grass in the prairie. And the next slide there, 50 million buffalo, single largest migratory herd in the world. Now that's when America was great. That's when America was great. You know, and I think about that because it's really important not to have, like, an ecological amnesia. I've heard that term, ecological amnesia, which is when you forget what was there. You know, in some places you might see it more, where they say, I remember that I heard that once there used to be wild rice there, right? Or, you know, but you forget, like, that you used to be able to drink the water. Right? And we've become the society that now drinks bottled water. And they're in a city and they bring me the bottled water in a thing. I said, you know, I'm just going to drink your tap water. Y'all pay for your taxes. You should have water that's drinkable in a city. Right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, how dumbed down did we get? That we forgot that once we could drink the water from a stream. And now at least I want to be able to drink the water and not wait for some water purification system to come. You know, so it is this, like, continuum. And I want to be alert. I want to be present. I don't want to forget anything. And I want to actually live in the same ecosystem that my ancestors lived in. That's a lot of my responsibility and my covenant with the Creator, is to take care of that which was and that's which is, and make it even better. So 50 million, you know, and now they got 28 million cattle in the same ecosystem. Act like that's going to work out. All those cattle require, like, massive fossil fuels, feedlots, antibiotics. You know, so what sense did that all make? You understand what I'm saying? At some level. You know, and that's the difference between Anishinaabe thinking and industrial thinking, or, you know, might call it, I'm calling it actually the Wendigo economy. That's what I'm referring to it as, and I think we ought to just call it out. I told you I'm an economist by training, and I've been trying in every mechanism and every strategy to talk about this economy in some way, you know, that makes sense. And, you know, but an economy that destroys the wealth that is our source, our Mother Earth, is not an economy that is sustainable. It's not. But 50 million buffalo, that's when America was great. America was great when you could drink the water. America was, you know, great with a tremendous cultural diversity, you know, of all of our people. That's when America was great. And that is the same thing here. Y'all know that because it is the same ecosystems. And I could make fun of that crazy guy with orange hair, you know, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing of a system that forgets, like, the foundation. And so part of, as I think about what to talk about to Indigenous youth or to all youth, you know, because it is our responsibility to raise coherent children. Like, my retirement plan is trying to raise coherent children. You know what I'm saying? Is I'm not rich. I'm not going to have a lot of money socked away, but what I want is to not be stressed out because I haven't done a good enough job, and I know all those hard times these kids have. I know that. I know that. I try to buffer that best as I can. You know, but it is our responsibility to not raise idiots in these school systems. You know, and I'm full on saying that, man, because, you know, I don't know where Donald Trump got his education, but he's a complete idiot. You know what I'm saying? And that's a disservice to all of us. If non-native kids or whoever it is gets out of these schools and they have no idea of history, no idea of place, you know, no idea of the intersection between all of these issues in the present time, because this isn't history, this is now. This is now. All right, next slide. And this is another picture of the tremendous agrobiodiversity. This is one of the first seed catalogs, and that's the Missouri River, which is kind of the epicenter of northern agriculture. And you know, as I said, now this is a Dakota white flint corn, and I never grew this one before, and I went in my field and I grew this specifically because I grow next to a GMO field. And so I wanted to know, I usually grow a multicolor corn, which is called a painted mountain, and I also grow a Bear Island flint. You know, I specialize in heritage varieties of corn. That's what I really would rather do than a lot of other things. But in my other varieties, I can't see if that GMO get in there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's already all multiracial looking. You understand what I'm saying? It's all multicolor. And so I grew this one because I want to see if I could see that telltale sign of the yellow GMO corn. And there's none. My whole field. And so what I had to learn, which is my test this year, was when to plant, so that there'd be no cross-pollination between them and us, you know? And I planted this specific variety because I knew I could see if there was any mixing in this variety, and there was none. There's none. And so there's something to be learned, like at all times, from, you know, indigenous knowledge systems, appreciating your mandamin, your most sacred corn, and how you adapt and survive in the face of, you know, changing times. All right, next picture here. Okay, then I was going to talk about this a little bit. I just want to say, you know, in the teaching of Canadian history, you know, or U.S. history, that is always like this kind of, you know, I'm not a big fan of most of those teaching systems, you know. And what I want to say is that, you know, in terms of the United States, they had no experience with democracy. They came from feudalism. You know, y'all did too. You came from monarchy and feudalism. You hung on to it a little bit longer. You know, you did that old British model, and I'm not making no judgments there, it's all good. You know, but in the United States, they try to create this democracy, and then you know, the representational democracy. And the representational democracy is founded on the teachings of the Iroquois Confederacy. You know, and they missed some of those big teachings, but if you imagine, you know, 5 and then 6 tribes that came together to form a confederacy, and they put down their weapons. That's a good lesson, huh? Put down their weapons, buried their weapons, and said, let us figure out how to agree. Let us figure out how to work together. Let us figure out how to govern our people. Let us figure out how to do this in a way that reflects not only now, but looks to the 7th generation ahead, that is responsible. That was the Iroquois Confederacy. And so Ben Franklin, all them cool dudes with wigs, they all went over there and hung out, you know, and took a bunch of notes. And then they came back and they create the American Constitution, you know, but they missed some essential points, which, you know, I think a lot of you know. For instance, the fact it was the women, the clan mothers, that to this day appoint and remove the chiefs. That's very significant because in the United States, of course, women could not vote for a very long time. So very significant omissions. But representational democracy and the ideas of democracy, you know, can be taught with it from an indigenous worldview. Similarly, ideas of justice and reconciliation justice, very important, because Canada and the United States, you know, of course, the United States is the worst, but we have punitive systems of justice. Punitive systems of justice. And that is not necessarily, that comes from one worldview. But in a lot of our teachings, we have reconciliation systems of justice. And, you know, I just give you one example is that in this case, ex parte crow dog in the United States. Crow dog killed spotted tail on the Rosebud Reservation. I have no idea if you have any idea where that is. Go South Dakota, okay? You know, and he killed him, and then the United States bring in the Major Crimes Act, and it then began to charge him with murder, right? And so he's charged, but the traditional court system said that the crow dog family had to provide for the spotted tail family because they had killed their leader. And so what I'm trying to say, and so that was the traditional remedy. And you know, in more recent times, there was a big battle over this Crazy Horse malt liquor. I don't know if you have any idea what I'm talking about. Crazy Horse being one of the great Lakota chiefs, but the Stroh's company issued a malt liquor called Crazy Horse malt liquor. And the Lakota people and the Crazy Horse's descendants were very upset about that. And so they sued them in Rosebud Tribal Court. Rosebud Lakota Tribal Court. Y'all follow me kind of on this? Because I know this is not your geography. But they sued him in Rosebud Tribal Court, and Stroh's came to court. And he acquiesced to the Rosebud Court decision. And so what he was asked to do was to formally apologize to the families. And he brought like 24 Pendleton blankets and 20 horses, 20 braids of sweetgrass, and committed to not continuing his practice. And I thought that was a really interesting application of a traditional justice system in 2010. That's about when that occurred. And so what I'm saying is that there's a lot to be learned from governance systems of Indigenous people. Because Canada and the United States, you know, I'd say it's kind of spotty on some of the democracy stuff. I know you're all super proud of yourselves. I got a lot of questions here, particularly as a First Nation person. You know, it doesn't seem like all shakes down equal, you know, and can learn from different systems. I'm saying learn from different systems. You know, if you want to hang around 1,000 years as a democracy, don't be punitive, be reconciliatory. I'm saying those are some examples of things that you learn, and it's in civics class. You understand what I'm saying? You know, so it's not just teaching about Indigenous peoples or First Nations people in your outdoor education, right? Or in your, you know, Manitoba history. I'm like, what are the paradigms of thinking that come out of Indigenous nations that are informative and helpful as we move forward? Because democracies and civil society are vital. They change, and they must change according to be healthier. Okay, let's see what the next slide is. I'll be surprised too. Okay, this is the colonialism slides. You know, you cannot underestimate, and it is very essential that we talk about all of the egregious crimes. You know, I know nobody really want to talk about that, but I know that Canada has been in a big apology system, but that is buffalo skulls. That is what that is. And the crime against nature, the crime against people that was committed by the United States in different ways continues to be committed by Canada. Continues to be committed by Canada with the mass destruction of ecosystems like in the tar sands territory. It's things that are unresolved historic and present grief that exist. And it is in my heart, it is in the heart of every Indigenous person. And if you have a good case of historical amnesia because of your education in Canada and you forget about stuff like that, maybe you don't know, but you need to feel. You need to feel what has happened here, and we need to come to the process of how you make amends for that. Next picture. This is the signing of a dam. This picture could be any reserve. This is the Fort Berthold Dam signing photo, and I'm just saying there's a Native man there crying and weeping. You know, I get so vexed. I get so darn vexed with these provinces that act as if progress, you know, that there's some form of progress, and the price is that. The price is dignity of human beings. The price is flooding of homeland after homeland after homeland after homeland. Huge intergenerational trauma that is carried, and yet everybody in this room knows that by and large, Indigenous history and these histories are not discussed in the curriculum. And it is important that we bring these in, that we understand the implications, and we understand that it is time to not just say, you know, I have a lot of problems a lot of times with, you know, we'll give you some money, I hope you feel better. You know, I don't feel better. I don't feel better. A little money doesn't change my situation. You know, I want things fixed. You know, I want things fixed. And those are long-term ecological issues, but the fact is there's a lot of stupid dam projects. There's a lot of stupid dam projects that were put up for a lot of bad reasons. And this is in our territories, and there are some in these territories. You know, I'm not a fan of the Manitoba hydro dams in the north. The impact on the Pimachikamek and other peoples, I'm fully aware of that. And that is genocide in the making in Manitoba as we speak. And then they act as if there's some like, why are those kids committing suicide? Wow, that's so crazy. You know, we're committing suicide because of the grief of losing an entire way of life and an ecosystem and being expected to move into the outskirts of Winnipeg and become some kind of a third-class citizen here. Because that is in fact the expectation that Manitoba has. Is y'all will work it out. All you people who are climate change refugees in the north, your villages flooded out. All you people whose territories have been contaminated, you just move over there and live in some ghetto in Winnipeg, you know? And that is not the way things should be. And so we must be courageous as teachers. Look into the depth of these issues. Do not like pick some, pick a suicide epidemic and say, wow, how horrible is that? Look at why that happened. Look at the complicity of Manitoba in that process. Look at it and figure out how we address this, because everybody in this room wants to be a better person. Everybody in this room wants to live in a society that doesn't cause misery to others. And there are ways to do that, but we must have the courage, and you must be part of the teaching of those students to find that courage and to find those knowledge systems. Okay, now I got a couple more. Okay, and then this here, your sturgeon harvest plummet. That's on Rainy River. I seen one beautiful young woman with her Name skirt. You know, my own territory, same thing. Our sturgeon was obliterated in our territory. But what I want to tell you is that around 1999, I went to Manitou Rapids. Y'all know where Manitou Rapids is? I went to Manitou Rapids to see my friend Al Hunter. You know, go for ceremonies up there with Al Hunter. And he says, you should meet my brother. His name is Joe Hunter. And he has a sturgeon hatchery here in Manitou Rapids. He said, you should meet him. They call him the Sturgeon General of Canada, right? You know, so I go over there and see this guy, and he's got this totally amazing sturgeon hatchery. It's like the world-class sturgeon hatchery there. I have no idea if you know how great Joe Hunter is. You know, and so I'm there and I'm like looking at these sturgeon, and they're having like sturgeon sex or something. I don't know what's going on in there. You know, I don't really understand that whole thing, but I'm petting them. And I'm like so mesmerized by them, you know. I love them so much. And so I say, Joe, can I bring some home? He says, yeah. So next week I come back with 4 kids in an Aerostar van, this bubbly thing hooked to my car lighter, and 2 Coleman coolers, right? And I go over to see Joe Hunter, and I get 5 sturgeon, 5 Name, you know, because on my reservation they were obliterated. And we're in the same ecosystem and it's the same kind of sturgeon. And I say, I get those sturgeon from him, and I say, so what do I say when I hit customs, Joe? And he says, oh, just say they're your pets, right? I'm renowned at this. So they didn't ask me at that Fort Francis International Falls. I just kind of cruise across. I was like, phew. I get home, I put those sturgeon in my lake, because my lake, Round Lake, Gawawi-Gamug, had them sturgeon in it. So did White Earth Lake, so did all our lakes. You know, I put them sturgeon in our lake, and I say, you're home now, you're home now. And then after that, I went to talk to my tribal biologist, because my tribe, I have 22,000 tribal members, and we have a big reservation. So I just want you to understand the sequence. After that, I went and talked to my tribal natural wildlife, my fisheries biologist. And this is Randy Zortman. When he sees me, he's like, he's like, Winona, do you have any idea how many laws you just violated? He's like, international transport of endangered species. And he starts listing them off, and I said, Randy, there's the white man's laws and there's the creator's laws. Right? I said, those sturgeon don't know a boundary. And I brought him home. And he was like kind of perplexed for a little bit, but I want you to know that my tribe has the largest sturgeon restoration program in our region now. We have hundreds of thousands of sturgeon in our lakes. And when I seen that young woman today with that beautiful skirt on, when my first grandson was born, do you know what clan he was? He was sturgeon. And I said, I didn't plan any of that, you know what I'm saying? That was like not my plan. But I said, look, honey, your relatives are here. And just what I want to say is that in that holistic way that Dave was talking about, we grieve the loss of our relatives. We grieve them because our sturgeon were gone and our clan had no relative that was there to honor. And so in something, you move one piece. I'm not going to say it's like a Rubik's Cube, but you move one piece and something else moves and something else moves. And that's part of our sacred responsibility, is what is it that we can move that can change something? And you don't always know, but always put good heart, good intent, good heart, good intent, good prayer. And then maybe something happened, Sometimes I botch things up too. But pretty much, I just pray. Okay, next one here. Okay, this is why I'm here, the other reason. Now, we are also connected because of some dysfunctional infrastructure. I am the person, my people are the people that are downstream on line 3. Enbridge is barreling through, acting as if it's all good. Y'all know Enbridge, single largest pipeline company in the world. 5 years ago, they announced a fracked oil pipeline they want to cross my territory with. Brand new corridor. We already got 6 lines that go through our territory. And they announced a brand new pipeline, cut through our best wild rice territories. Everything they had not already put at risk, they were proposing to put at risk. And so my people fought that company, the Enbridge company. We fought them. We fought them for 4 years in the Minnesota regulatory process. We fought them for 4 years in the Minnesota regulatory process. I've given 5 years of my life to the Enbridge Corporation, and I don't really like that. But what I know is that that's a really bad idea. And so for 4 years we fought them, and on August 2nd of last year, the Enbridge Corporation announced that it was canceling that Sandpiper project, that big pipeline project that was a fracked oil project. And so what I want you to teach your children is that it is possible to challenge large multinational corporations. Do not teach them that it is inevitable. Do not teach them that corporations have the right to control your water, the right to control your future. Teach them that courageous people stand up and courageous people defeat large corporations. Teach them so that they become courageous people. Because that is what we need, is people of courage. I always say there's enough problem makers out there. What we need is problem solvers, right? We need people who are going to solve things. And so I tell you that story because Enbridge has come back with this 915,000 barrel a day line 3 that they are now proposing through our territory. And so I am related to you through some dysfunctional pipes. That's what I'm going to say. And the Enbridge Corporation, because you have a dysfunctional economy in Canada and you are a petro-state, because you have made some poor economic decisions as a country and you have not diversified your economy, and your economy is based on oil out of the tar sands and pillaging the rest of the world, since 75% of the world's mining corporations are Canadian-based. Huge implications of the economic choices of this country. So as I said, I'm an economist by training, and I think it is time to evolve your economy to an economy that is not based on the Windigo economy of the constant extraction of ecosystems, because it has huge human rights implications. And we can all talk about things, and we could talk about how great Canada is, but you're not so damn great if you destroy ecosystems and people. And I think we ought to own it, and I think we need to figure out how to change it. because I'd really like it all to change, because right now they are barreling towards us. They are barreling towards us. And what I'm telling you is that we are going to stop them when they hit Minnesota. We're going to stop them because we are in the regulatory process, and we fought them off once. We fought them off once, and we are going to fight them off again, because Minnesota doesn't have any need for this oil. We're a pass-through state. And Enbridge does not have the need to be greedy. They can reverse their lines and do all kinds of magic stuff and still pump 500,000 barrels a day more of oil through their lines. They could do that. And we need to quit entitling corporations to take everything that is ours. And why that is important is, next slide, is that this is also because of Enbridge. These are pictures from Standing Rock. And I know some of you were there. Were any of you there? Thank you. Okay, there were 3 of you there. Okay. But I myself came to Winnipeg and went to Standing Rock with some great Isaac Murdoch art that I brought across the border. And that's right. And there was a lot of people here who supported us. You know, and what I want to say is that people watch that go down, right? Y'all watch that go down. But what y'all need to know is that 28% of that was financed by Enbridge, because they didn't get our pipeline, and so they bought that pipeline. That's what happened. And so your Canadian corporation is responsible for what happened there in North Dakota on Standing Rock. You know, because that corporation didn't have the money to continue. The $2.8 billion that Enbridge put in shored them up. And so when they put the dogs on our people, when they started shooting us and tear gassing us, you know who I called? I called Enbridge. I said, Enbridge, you have an Aboriginal policy. You have a First Nations policy. It says you work with First Nations. I said, you need to call for a full environmental impact assessment. You need to call for a consultation with the Standing Rock tribe. You need to uphold your policy. And you know what Enbridge did? They did nothing. They did nothing. And so we hold them responsible for 28% of the injuries. We hold Enbridge responsible for 28% of the arrests, 28% of the bullets, and 28% of the tanks. So that's what I want to say is that in Canada, I know this is a little uncomfortable for you, but this is what's going down in the world. It's what's going down in the world, and it's coming out of up here, and we are all related. We are all related by choices that are made, economic choices that are made, and by also the civil society that we now face. There's a few more of these pictures. There's one. You saw some of these pictures. That's us getting tear gas. Next one. That's us facing these huge damn pieces of tanks. Now, I don't think that happened in Canada. I don't know. But they put military equipment on us, and y'all know that, right? You know, that military equipment. Next one here. I like this photo. It's like the coolest. I get to hang out with those guys this summer. I rode horse for about 250 miles with these guys. Me and like 20-year-olds. Ever crazy me, huh? Was that cool? Wouldn't you like to be one of those Native kids? You know what I'm saying? At some level, I want to grow up and be a 17-year-old Lakota or Dakota man who can stand on his horse. Is that, excuse my use of the term, but is that badass or what? You know what I'm saying? And so in that moment, in the moment of the evil and the ugly of industrial society, we also found part of ourselves. We found our courage. We saw how beautiful we were. I saw these men that, you know, that changed our lives. It was our Selma moment. You know, our moment of truth where we saw who we were and we found our courage. And that is what Enbridge is facing. 10,000 people that woke up. And we ain't going to sleep. You know, we ain't going to sleep. But there is more than that, because we are water protectors, which is what I encourage you all to think about being. You know, that was used as a bad term by the state of South Dakota and the state of North Dakota. But what I want to say is that I'm proud to say that I am a water protector. You know, and I think we all should be water protectors at some level. Next slide. And this is your dysfunctional system. I just want to mention that one more time with your tar sands and all. You know, I just want to drive that home because that petrodollar really upsets me. You know, I'm kind of, you know, you guys, I'm sorry that your money is worth so little. Diversify your economy and you'd be in better shape. Just little, notes from the economist who has trained at Harvard and MIT. Diversify your economy and your loonie will get stabilized. If you're going to base it on the tar sands, you're tanking. You're tanking. All right, next one. Okay, this is my village. The other thing that we want to talk about is where we are going. This is a snapshot of my village that was taken for a film a few years ago called The Seventh Fire. Poorly named, appropriated name, nothing to do with the film. It was about gangs in our village, right? It's a snapshot of my village, rough village. Village is called Pine Point. Everything you don't want to have. I mean, what I want to say is it's like, look, in Canada, they don't even have drinking water that's adequate in a lot of these reserves, right? That's this village too. That's this village too. First world country in a D in infrastructure, same thing as Canada, shame on you. Shame on you. You want to build big pipelines, but you can't even provide water to your people. To me, that is an ultimate civics and economics question of where we're going. You're going to build infrastructure for people, or are you going to build infrastructure for oil companies? So this is my village, the village that nothing ever trickled down to in the trickle-down economy. No programs trickled down because we didn't have enough patronage in our system. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're the people. And so this film come out, which is a snapshot of the meth epidemic. And we're still in that. I got opioid, I got ODs on my reservation. I got so many deaths on my reservation and so much sorrow and self-medication, And sometimes I'm like, my people, because it is so much grief. You go to funeral after funeral after funeral after funeral. That's what we are dealing with. And that's what a lot of your Native kids are dealing with in your school system here. The number of funerals. And it's really hard to shake yourself loose from that. So we look at that and we said, we didn't really like how that all looked. And so we decided we'd do something else. This is the next picture. So we look at our little ugly housing project and we decided to paint it. So we started painting our houses up. We put, a lot of those people are wolf clan, they want wolves, so they want Mingan. They all want Mingan on their house. So I got 7 houses painted there. Because I have this theory which someone did some master's thesis or PhD on, which is if you change the visual environment around people from a miserable environment to a beautiful environment, it changes how they feel about themselves, right? Now I could have done 3-4 studies if I was like Canadian 4 or 5, before I decided to embark on anything like painting. Or in my neck of the woods, we just say, just do it, And so, we decided to start painting these houses. So we paint our houses in our village. Next picture, we paint our water tower. It was all tagged up with some gang signs, right? And, what I want to see is like if you start changing things, how are we going to feel? How are we going to feel? And then we start putting solar thermal panels on people's houses because it's freezing in the wintertime. Now, there's a whole science class in that. You know what I'm saying? It's like teach these kids something useful. Don't raise a bunch of kids that don't know what they're doing and don't understand energy efficiency. Because the country that consumes the most energy per capita in the world is y'all. Canada. Sorry. I thought you was trying to put it on us down in the US. I said, how could you consume more than an American? I said, oh, you could be a Canadian. But my point of this is that, you got inefficient systems, you got freezing houses, you're trying to pump fossil fuels into everything. You don't need the lecture, but I spent all my time on energy issues and I'm saying, if you want to learn something from Puerto Rico in the time of biblical catastrophes that is coming, let's just get real. You might as well relocalize, put some local solar, get some local heat. The more you can, get wood in your villages so that people can at least stay warm. Change it so that you got some security. This here is one of my best examples. This is the Lubicon Solar Project. Melina Lubicon, this was her master's thesis at the University of Victoria. She didn't just write about doing a solar project for her village, she just did it. And so she's up there in the middle of the tar sands, Little Buffalo. They had a diesel generator. She put 20 kilowatts of solar up to power their health clinic. Now that's cool, huh? That's what I feel like. And then you teach your whole village about what, this looks like and how you do it, and how you turn off stuff and you evolve. And so what I'm saying is that is our responsibility, each of us, is to teach this generation how to live. How to live. Next one, my cool squash. This isn't this year's picture, but to me, seeds and gardening is about possibility. You go in there and you plant something with prayer and hope in the spring, and you have no idea how it's going to work out. You understand what I'm saying? But you have faith. You talk to your plants, you pray, and in the end you get something beautiful. That squash, the seeds was given to me, and the story I was told is that the original seeds were found in a clay ball in an archaeological dig near Green Bay, Wisconsin. And that they shook that clay ball, and in it they heard there was something. They busted open, and it was these seeds. They carbon date those seeds 800 years old, right? And I know they grow that here because I gave that squash up here too. So I started growing this squash. About 15 years ago. And that's the story I was told. Then someone told me that's not the correct story. It was really a 1,000-year-old squash. I was like, still cool, though, right? And so I grew it, but there's a knowledge in that because they had that in that there. They had that clay ball. And y'all know that big Norwegian vault with the seeds, y'all know what I'm talking about? Now that's awesome. I understand they had a little problem with their permafrost subsiding this year. Right? Y'all know what I'm talking about? So my feeling is clay ball's good. Community seed keeping. But the thing about the clay is the clay wicks out the moisture. You understand what I'm saying? So that's indigenous knowledge systems applied in science today. And so I grow this, and I grew it. He showed up again this year. I planted, I was like, I hope it's you. And I go in my garden, and there I have about 5 of them. I was all happy. I was like, oh, you're back. That's cool. This one squash. And so people ask me when I start growing it, they say, what's it called? What's it called? I said, I don't know. I said, but then I said, well, white guys name stuff all the time, so I'm going to name the squash. You know how white guys always name stuff, right? Never ending. So I named this squash Gete Okosemen, which means something like really cool old squash. So, life is possibility. When my father came to see me when I was an undergraduate at Harvard, he said, Winona, you're a really smart young woman, but I don't want to hear your philosophy if you can't grow corn. What I'm saying is, what are we teaching people? How are they going to survive? Are they going to require people to feed them, take care of them, sew for them, clothe them, heat them? Or will they have any facet of self-sufficiency? It is time to raise coherent people who do not believe that they are going to be, cared for by Manitoba Hydro. It is time to raise people that will know how to eat. Be responsible. If you're not a responsible gardener, be a responsible farmer's market. Go to the farmer's market. Find your gift, I really like your guy that has bees and honey off of the roof of the Fort Garry. That cool guy, I met him one time. All right, next one. I only got a couple more slides. That's it, man. This is we're going to go with like 30 by 60 foot mural in downtown Duluth. Along with my philosophy of let us make our world beautiful. This is a water protector. She overlooks the city of Duluth. She is beautiful. She is art, and she is also everything that, at some level, every person here knows how many of our women have ended up in the Red River. Are missing and murdered women. I was honored to ride my horse for a woman who was murdered in Fargo about a month ago, Samantha Graywind. And she was, she was murdered, and her body was in the river. And I was like, I have relatives. I have a cousin whose body was in the river. Every one of us knows that. And it's something that hangs over us as Native women, as missing and murdered. And I don't really know how to speak to that grief, except for what we did is we paint her. And we said, you may not see us, City of Duluth, you may not see Native women. We may be invisible to you. You know, you may be looking over us, City of Winnipeg, City of Duluth. You may not see us because we are invisible to you. Or you choose to avert your eyes. You choose to avert your eyes. But let me show you what we look like, because we are beautiful. And so this artist's name is Votan. And she is a water protector, and she overlooks Gitchigumi, Lake Superior. And so what I'm just going to say in conclusion is I'm very grateful to be here with you. I wish you the best. I'm going to hang out and check out some of your workshops. But it is this moment in time where we all have our gifts. And you have this tremendous gift, an opportunity to provide knowledge, not only to Aboriginal First Nation students, but to all students. Let us raise coherent, compassionate students, compassionate people that will not only know our history, but will be like, be like the rest of us. Like, I see where we are going. I see where we are going. And there's a saying in our territory which is, you're either at the table or you are on the menu. And I want to be at the table. In fact, I want to be driving, in my biodiesel Mercedes. And y'all know that's the future. And the reason I know that is true is that the combustion engine is 16% efficient, and the electric engine is 65% efficient. And that's how General Motors just announced that the future is electric. And so what I'm saying is prepare. Prepare these children for the vision that they are going to need for the future. Prepare them with all the knowledge, and do not be afraid to step outside of the box that you came from. Because the world is beautiful. And it will take all of our minds to put them together to make the future that we need for our children. Miigwech. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Winona.